All right, so our goal here is to continue with the Desmos picture graph for today. I want to show you one or two extra things that I hadn't shown you the other day, just because I didn't want to overwhelm you. But I do want you to know, if you go to the week 11 folder, you don't need to do this right now, but you just know that it's there. We have our agenda. And then at the very bottom, I actually added a new video that has a couple of different things that you could do if you want to. Something with using the shading, new way to do restrictions, or even do animation if you want to. And remember, this project, by the way, I don't think I showed you guys this yesterday, but I'm sure you probably found it. At the bottom of the week 11 folder is the actual Desmos project assignment. Yours looks a little bit different, but when you click on this, that's where you can find the rubric. And we went through the rubric on Monday, but just a reminder, you need to use a minimum of one of each of these types. So just a quick reminder, these functions can be found in the week 11 notes that we took on Monday. So if you go to the notes page there's a PDF of it. You can scroll down, and this was the parent functions. Those of you on Zoom right now, if you want, you might want to take a screenshot of that just to make sure that you know when we say quadratic, what does the quadratic look like? That's right here. When we say polynomial, let me pull the rubric up. So when we say polynomial, that's cubic or quartic. I guess you could go higher than that, but here's a cubic. So to the third power, fourth power, fifth power, that's up to you. And then we've got the square root, cube root, and this actually could and maybe should, now, this could be renamed as rational. So this is the rational one. And remember, you don't have to use the whole graph, right? You can use parts of it. So I'll show you that here, and that's kind of what I wanted to go over right now, is let me show you just a really quick way. I would ask that you all kind of just give me a couple minutes to show you some cool things with Desmos that you may or may not know. So we talked about sliders the other day. I'm just going to use the absolute value one with A, H, and K. So then if I hit all, I have my sliders. Now, we can move this around, but let's say that, I wanted to get like a little mountain peak here off to the left and up. And then I can just recreate this image with the A, H, and K that I had before. So negative 0.8. I could just type in minus 3.1, or I could do plus, and then I could do 4. Anyways, so that gives me this official one. Now, notice if I move my slider, now that repositions, and I could create another one. But what if I go back to this one, and I change the inequality sign, or change it to an inequality sign? If I shade everything less than that, it'll shade below. But then I can do restrictions as well. And you watch the tab on restrictions, and there's more than one way to do restrictions. You can do restrictions in terms of x's. So look at the x coordinates of these points. If I say I want to be from negative 8.1 to negative 1 or to positive 1.9, I have to set up the inequality, negative 8.1, and I want x to be in between those two functions. But notice, that stops the shading from this x to this x, but it shades everything down below. So what else you could do, oops, undo button is my favorite button. What you can do then is you can actually add more restrictions. And what I might do here is I might try to do the y value. So notice the y value. Here y is 0, and I go to y equals 4. Well, I could do another restriction saying I want y to be between 0 and 4. So notice how I restricted basically from left to right with my x's, and I restricted up and down. That's one way to get certain pieces shaded. And again, shading is not a requirement. I'm just showing you a little bit extra stuff, which is kind of cool. And there's other things you can do here as well. This isn't something that I might do. Well, actually, I'll show you this one because some kids really like it. What if I restrict items with H and K? So what if I restrict this one? And all I'm going to do is change the A value. Now watch what happens if I just press play. It animates, right? It moves it. Now what I can do then is I can get creative and say, you know what if I just want this to show from 1 to, let's see, where's my 1.7? So if I go from 0.7 to, let's say, and I'm going to go one more than my H on here, so I'm going to go 2.7. And that might actually be pretty big. But if I animate the A, now I might even play around with this more. I might animate the Y as well. And notice my K value is at 5.2. So what if I go up and down 1 from that K value? So what if I'd go from 4.2 to 6.2? Oops, I forgot my Y value. So remember, Y's kind of restrict your up and down movement. Watch what happens. And again, I might have to play around with this, but I can even change the steps. So instead of going from -10 to 10, I could go from like -5 to 5, and that's just the steepness of the graph. What's that kind of look like? You do a couple of them, it might look like a bird flapping in the background. All right, so those are things you can play around with. You definitely do not have to do it, but if you've gotten your main picture done and you've met all the 4 requirements, so you know you're going to get the 20 out of 20, if you really want to get creative and add some more difficulty, maybe just add some background things to your picture. Don't change the original picture you have, but then play around with some of the side things, and you can really have some fun with it. So I wanted to show you that. Just remember, playing with inequalities can shade sliders. You can change some things if you want. It's a lot of trial and error and see what works. Remember this help button, and the video tutorials will really help. There's another thing that you could do, and this is if I do a random point. Now, I don't want to use x comma y, but let's say I use different variables, t comma s. And then I just put sliders in there. Oops, did I do, I don't know why t didn't work. Maybe I'll use r. So I just used 2 variables that weren't defined yet, but notice that gives me this point. And then what that does is that allows me to just kind of quickly move the point wherever I want it to. And if I wanted to make that point a little larger, you can play around with it. Oh, maybe they won't let us on this one. Okay, never mind. I thought we could change the size of that. But we could do a circle. We saw that before. So anyways, there are things that you can do to get more creative and have some fun. And that's what I want to challenge you with right now, is see if you can boost up your level of difficulty or creativity if you're already done with the minimum requirement. So what you're going to do now is you're going to play around, meet the requirements for quadratic, polynomial, radical, rational. That was, somebody emailed me and asked if I could demonstrate a rational equation. I said, sure. So if I use a, h, and k again, notice I already defined a, h, and k for the absolute value function. So I can't use a, h, and k again, but I can use different letters if I want. Let's do, I don't know, let's see if e will work. No, he's a special number. I should have known that. Let's do j divided by x minus f plus L. So notice this is basically your A, your H, and your K. This is the rational function, and if I make sliders for them all, here's part of that function. Now, I'm not quite sure how I would want this to fit in the picture that I currently have, but I could play around with it, and maybe I want it to look, I don't know, something like this. Maybe I only want this part of the graph right here to make it look like a little street lamp or something. I could do a couple of things. I could keep these points here and just change a restriction here, or I could rewrite it, and that way I can use this function again. But watch what happens if I want to restrict this one just quick. So I know that I'm at like 6 point something here, 6.629. And y is 0. And then if I go from maybe a random point here, like let's say 7.76, I'm going to change my x's. So I think it was like 6.629 and 7.76 roughly. See how that cut this off from this x to this x? And then maybe I want to get this point, this movable point, RS, right on the center part. And now that kind of looks like a street lamp, right? So you can get creative with that, play around using, now notice, if I want to do another point, then all I would do is record this point, 7.6 and 3.3 down here. So 7.6, comma 3.3. And now I have that point locked in, so I could move my other point somewhere else up here. And maybe I'm creating the Luxor Casino in Las Vegas right now. I don't know. So that's your job. Play around. I will be available for any questions right now.